And with this, I would like to invite Mr. Sriram for this session. He'll be sharing his experience on agile transformation at Philips. He's a delivery manager for platforms, and he will motivate his team to be agile, so being agile. And with this, I would like to welcome Sriram to deliver a speech about agile transformation journey in Philips. Welcome, Sriram.
First of all, good afternoon to all of you. He did give a brief introduction of myself. Basically, I have my name. It's right there. I go by Sri just to keep it simple. For those who can't pronounce, I don't see a lot of non-Indians here, so it should not be too difficult to get my name anyway. What I do in Philips is I'm responsible for solution delivery on certain platforms. So all of Philips is organized around end-to-end process platforms and technology platforms. So there are 6 of them, and the process platforms are idea to market, market to order, order to cash, and enabling platforms like finance, procurement, HR, etc. So those are 4. And then we have information and integration, which are technology platforms, and we refer to them as foundation platforms. I'm responsible for those 2 platforms, and by virtue of what I do, and by virtue of being in IT delivery, needless to say, we have to live agile on a daily basis, and we are proud of that. We are absolutely proud of that. When I first consented to do the session, I didn't realize that it's in the afternoon at 2 o'clock. So it's always a challenge to keep people awake, including the speaker himself. So I decided not to have lunch so that I'm awake. But I can't force all of you to not have lunch. But I still hope that what I share in the next half an hour is tasty enough that you still stay awake. So thank you. With that, let me quickly go into what I want to talk about today. Yeah, I do have a clicker. I forgot about it. Okay. So essentially, agile and the agile journey in Philips start off, in the backdrop of a different business level transformation itself. So something that is referred to as accelerate. So there was a pan Philips business transformation that was kicked off about 2.5, 3 years back. And really agile and the IT transformation and IT delivery transformation inside Philips was kick-started as part of that. So if you look at transformation, there are supporting transformations and leading transformations. So to enable the business accomplish what they need to accomplish by virtue of accelerate, we did a few things. But more importantly, we ourselves also had to transform. And I do have a slide on accelerate, so I'll talk about it. And that was when we started working towards agile. So I'll talk about that, and then I'll go through, how we started, what did we do over the last 2.5, 3 years, our ups and downs, what did we learn in the process, how do we go about living agile on a day-to-day basis, and then finally some lessons learned and the road ahead, what do we want to do going forward. I do have some colleagues from Philips, so in case I lie, they'll keep me honest. So you can feel free to ask me questions and they will answer. So, but anyways. Now, so quickly about Philips. Most of you will be familiar with Philips, but it is very essential to have a slide on Philips because we are going through a big transformation in terms of our businesses itself. So it is useful to just do a quick check here. So how many of you think about Philips, and what do you think of really? Which product do you really think of when you think of Philips? TV, all right, excellent. What else? Bulbs, okay. Anything else? Excellent. Anything else? Okay, that's very relevant. Brilliant. Anything else? So, very good. Yeah. So let me tell you, we've sold off the TV division. So the Philips TV that you see in the market is only by virtue of a brand agreement for a few years. So they will use the Philips brand for a while. Right? Then we got into hair dryers. Now, hair dryers, incidentally, is one of the few consumer lifestyle products that we still make. Then someone else mentioned medical equipment, eminently relevant. So today Philips is more a healthcare company, okay, than a lighting company. In 1891, when it started off with the bulb. And all our childhoods passed by, buying Philips bulbs. Your dad would say, go and get a Philips bulb, right? So, whereas not anymore. And we would have the ubiquitous Murphy TV in our houses, right? But not anymore. Those things are a thing of the past. And Philips, as a business, has transformed itself significantly. And we are no longer, we still, of course, have a lighting division. And I'll tell you why. I'm sort of saying that we've moved on and we've become more of a health tech company. You can see that we are into cardiac care, acute care, baby care, personal care, and of course a few other consumer lifestyle things like coffee maker and what have you. By virtue of this transformation in what we do for a living, Philips is going to split into two leading companies. Some of you might have read about it. Our predominant divisions were lighting, healthcare, and consumer lifestyle, right? The lighting piece and the rest of it is separating out to create two leading companies so that both of them can march ahead and take the challenges of the market environment head on. And that's going to happen effective 1st of Feb 2016. The processes are on right now, and that's what you see right there. So healthcare and consumer lifestyle will together form health tech, and lighting will be lighting solutions. And that's going to happen pretty soon. It's not that these won't be Philips. They will continue to be Philips. They will continue to be part of the family. But the idea is to give greater independence, greater freedom to each of these companies to financially determine their fate. And that's the idea. All right? I mentioned about accelerate. So fundamentally, Philips, by virtue of what it is, right? We spoke of the fact that started off with lighting. Along the way, it discovered that, hey, you know what? The same technology that we used for creating, making bulbs, we could probably create some imaging systems. So got into, imaging systems for healthcare. And you know what? Maybe the same things can be used for creating, making TVs. Because at the end of the day, it's light. Everything is light. So they got into consumer lifestyle products, TVs and what have you, etc. And in the process also acquired a lot of companies. Needless to say, it became a very federated, inorganic organization. By virtue of that, multiple business models became Philips business models, and multiple IT environments became Philips environments. So you can imagine it became a spaghetti ball, a nice spaghetti ball, not like Maggie anymore, but maybe a little bit like Maggie, the same soup that they are in right now. So as a consequence, we decided that, hey, you know what, we've got to simplify all this. So we came down from 200 business models to 4 business models. We use business component modeling as the technique to do that. And that's only one example of it, but in general, idea was to simplify the way we do business, really become more customer-centric, not let the, convoluted systems dictate the way we do business, but rather have the customer and customers' priorities dictate the way we do business. So really it was about what our strengths are, how do we deliver, how do we invest, and where do we invest. So that continuum that you see there, and of course that has to be predicated based on our core strengths, which is of course people, culture, governance, process systems, and performance. So that was really what the intent was, and based on that, there was a pan-Philips initiative to simplify the way we do business, to bring in lean and agile practices, and lo and behold, that had to touch IT. So that's when agile was conceptualized. And before even agile was conceptualized from a delivery standpoint, we thought about simplifying the way we, in fact, are organized. So idea was to be very customer-centric, really organize ourselves in such a way that everything leads to the customer. So that's what you see over there. I won't belabor this because the agile story itself will suffer if I go into that. But fundamentally, we organized ourselves in a very seamless fashion with the sectors being the crux and everything being customer-facing and the IT business partners really being the conduit from IT into the business itself. But in order to facilitate all that, we needed a proper methodology, and that's when we said, hey, why don't we, start thinking about how do we really deliver value to business? How do we deliver solutions to business? How do we really enhance the speed to market? And how do we do it at the least cost possible? So how do we really do that? So that's when, we said Agile and the way of delivering solutions using Agile might be the right way to do it. And that's when we embarked on Agile, but prior to that, there's a whole reorganization of the way we do work inside IT. It was called the new operating model. What you saw on the previous slide was actually referred to as the new operating model. And in doing so, we actually embarked on a slew of changes. So we changed the way we deliver. We changed who delivered. So instead of really keeping everything in-house, we also outsourced, brought in partners, and actually had them deliver against clearly measurable metrics. So all of that happened almost at the same time. So that's really how we started off. So our starting vision really was to reduce the time to market and increase business relevance. Those were, if you ask me, the top two things: reduce this, the time to market and increase business relevance. A lot of everything that's actually said on the slide will come back again. So with that, I'll just move ahead. So this is how we went about the journey. Started in 2012. Initially, as you can see there, we were consciously incompetent, needless to say. Some of us are still consciously incompetent. I wouldn't lie there. And so we obviously were trying to understand what is Scrum, how do we really organize ourselves into a Scrum team, should a sprint really be 2 weeks, all the fundamentals of, executing using Agile. So got into that kind of a discussion. So we were fairly ignorant, but we got started off. That was 2012. And we really try to measure what's the percentage of Agile coverage. So when we started off in 2012, needless to say, probably we had a handful of teams which were trying to demonstrate that Agile can work. But there was still a high percentage of work happening on legacy platforms which were still following waterfall, etc., and maybe no methodology at all. But in 2013, we increased that percentage. We obviously instituted metrics. That's debate. We'll always debate about everything. So it's a predominantly Dutch organization. It's based out of Netherlands, and of course we've got hubs all over the world. And a healthy debate is what really keeps us going all the time. Needless to say, even when we embarked on Agile, debates were center stage. How do we do things? So 2014, we really came a long way. In fact, we using BCG, we instituted something called an ART assessment score, or you can refer to it as the Agile Maturity Score. And our target was to collectively, as IT delivery, reach 3 out of 5 by the end of 2014. We did make 3. Some delivery centers were at 3, some were not. But that sort of gave us a clear direction of what is it that we really need to accomplish. We realized that we can't try and conquer world hunger by trying to say, we'll do a 4 or whatever. We realized that there were a lot of things that we still needed to get right. So, and all these were great mirrors that we would look into and determine really where we are as far as, our maturity is concerned. And needless to say, while doing so, we did a lot of things, and I'll talk about it. We also set up an Agile Center of Excellence, and the Center of Excellence had coaches. Those coaches would coach programs. They would conduct trainings. We and I actually have a slide on training, so I won't steal my own thunder, but fundamentally all of that. And programs were guided on how to actually do things better, so on and so forth. They actually became also a crack team to help programs come out of tough situations, etc. And 2015 really sharpening the axe to live the spirit. While we might be agile, but there is still so much more that we can do. Some of us might be agile for the heck of it, just to ensure that yes, we are agile, just to show that we are agile. Some of us might actually be believing that we have to be agile. To get that spirit inside is not an easy thing. And that is why 2015 and onwards is about really living the spirit. It's about ensuring that everyone feels the same way about agile. It's about increasing the coverage. Within IT, I think we've done a reasonable job. There's still some more ground to cover. We will get there. But business, within business as well, agile is a big deal now. A lot of business projects are run on agile today. And all of that. So we still have a long distance to go. But as a practice, as a methodology, as a way of working, I think it's come there. But we need to do much more. I have a road ahead slide, so I'll talk about it. So 2014, we were consciously competent, and we are hoping that 2015 is all about continuously improving. So Agile Center of Excellence, I mentioned about that. So it is a group of people who are Agile evangelists. We have internals and externals in this team, and these people do a variety of things. They conduct training programs, they coach, they act as coaches, they coach programs itself, the various transformation programs that we have. They also try and run a lot of evangelizing sessions. We also have something called the Agile Day, in Philips, where we actually run a game across all locations, almost virtually. And that's a pretty interesting thing. And just to sort of imbibe the spirit, and this entire thing is organized by the Agile Center of Excellence. Most important message on this slide is that this is done across IT, partners, and business. It is, very essential. I know there is Wipro in the room here. They are a partner in Philips, and very clearly, we do a lot of stuff with our partners. Partners, of course, are the crux of executing this vision because we've outsourced most of our core work. So it's very essential to live the spirit along with partners and, of course, with the business as well. I mentioned about, we believe that what gets measured gets delivered, very essential. So we have to have the right metrics, and those metrics span across core IT as well as, how do we measure across business, how's our business participation, what is the backlog quality, how do we really, ensure that the backlog quality is something that Scrum teams can actually use. Velocity, are we really improving sprint on sprint? Or even release on release, etc. So product owner participation, business participation is vital. When we started off 2 years back, people would have delegates. Sorry, I don't have time, but that business analyst sitting in IT, probably he's got time for you. We'll delegate him as the product owner. But when something goes wrong, they'll say, that guy in IT, he didn't know what my requirement was, but why the heck did you delegate in the first place? So, that happened, but today we track that product owner participation quite a lot. We try to ensure that, the product owners actually take their role very seriously. They are there in the, Scrum ceremonies and all of that fairly seriously, and they actually provide time to this whole thing. So that's also something that we measure. That's one of the metrics that gets reported out all the way back to the CIO. So besides that, of course, there are a bunch of other things. Velocity, reliability. How are we doing? What did you commit, and how much did we really improve on? We took certain sample programs and tried to see if really Agile Center of Excellence's intervention, can it help or not? And this is what we discovered. So I will, this is not across the board, but I know this slide is a bad slide, very difficult to read in the back, but I'll help you out. Fundamentally about, by virtue of the trainings, we were able to get a 40% saving because of trainings that were conducted in-house versus having to sort of outsource agile trainings. Just one example. Then the next metric that you see there is the number of people that are trained today in all. 3,214 have been trained, about 1932 scheduled, and YTD, year to date thus far, in about 5 or 6 months, is 309. Sorry. So the total IT population is in that ballpark. Okay. So, but this includes business as well. So if you look at the Philips population, that's 120,000. So, but then not everyone really need to be trained in Agile. So this is, if you look at the IT percentage, I would say upwards of 60% would be trained. So a lot of them are trained today. The other thing is, we took some sample programs, as I said. We saw almost 40%, increase in the uptake as far as the release acceptance of work is concerned. There was a 40% increase in throughput. There was a 10% increase in velocity. So very clearly, we saw some benefits. And again, these are not percentages that are pan delivery. These are percentages specific to those programs where we did some extra intervention. And also, the way the Agile Center of Excellence engages is focuses 10% on training, 20% on sustained engagement, and 70% through real-life practical execution in various programs. This is really something that a lot of you will be familiar with, not rocket science, but the whole idea is to say that there is an annual operating plan which sort of divvies up the money in terms of various portfolios. Those actually tell what are the broad solutions that we need to deliver to business. Those in turn are split into various high-level epics, if you will, that need to be delivered, and those epics are organized into multiple releases, and those, of course, the products being organized into multiple releases, and the various quarters that you see there are the various releases that will happen. We typically have releases across every quarter. Of course, in 2014 we did skip a quarter, but in 2015 we've got 4 releases. And then finally, that translates into lower level user stories, and those user stories are prioritized across sprints for a particular release by virtue of release planning that we do, and then finally delivered. That's pretty much how we go about. This should not be any different from anyone else following Scaled Agile, but just a quick depiction of what we do. Delivery centers. Now, as we went through the whole journey of Agile, we realized that we need to, we can't live in isolation. It can't be just an IT delivery only thing. It is very essential to really take the entire ecosystem together. So we created multidisciplinary teams which actually span across all the functions and also brings in participation from the business and actually have these delivery centers run as virtual units which are delivering solutions across the board. So you saw those stars flying everywhere. Those stars were actually people coming together. So I know it's a slightly kludgy slide. I don't like it very much, but it's okay. My boss likes it a lot, or my ex-boss likes it a lot. Fundamentally, yeah, across technical design, functional design, delivery management, supporting functions, partners, and of course, the infrastructure side. It was essential to really bring people together. So we created across every delivery center. I mentioned about the fact that I'm responsible for certain delivery centers. So for my delivery center, I have an MDT, a multidisciplinary team, which is very similar. It actually brings in all these people. Likewise, my counterparts, my peers elsewhere also have similar MDTs coming together. And these MDTs obviously have a clear goal of what we need to accomplish. And that comes by virtue of what you saw on the previous slide. What you saw here is actually the marching order for the MDTs of the various delivery centers. And this is something, and this entire team follows Scaled Agile and, of course, agile practices. So things that, this is just a laundry list, but fundamentally, we didn't want to stop at just following agile practices. The whole idea here is, of course, to do things better. And we also have something called a test factory, which is separate from, let's say, the core organization, and they do sort of independent testing. So idea is to keep sharpening the axe, bringing in test automation, bringing in automated build and deployment, so that by the click of a button, you can actually migrate to a higher environment. Bringing in continuous improvement, closer coordination with the operations team. Eventually, gradually, by bringing in all these improvements, including small improvements like delivery excellence improvements. They don't have to be grand ones. Small things that really help. We gradually move towards DevOps. That's where we want to go to. Some of the teams actually follow DevOps already. We're not using DevOps across the board, but idea is to really constantly keep sharpening the axe and gradually move towards extremely close coordination with operations by bringing in better automation and then moving towards DevOps. I actually moved to the case study. Sorry about the numbering. This is case study 1, not 2. So I have a couple of case studies to talk about. This is, of course, close to my heart, foundation platforms, and this is, so we've done, and more on the integration side than information. There is one interesting aspect about this platform. It is at the receiving end. It's a utility. It actually stitches together solutions from across all the platforms. When I started off today, I mentioned that we have 4 core platforms. What the integration and information platforms do is they build solutions for all these various platforms. So as a consequence, we receive requirements from all these various core platforms, and we build solutions. And so it's that much more difficult to be ahead of the game. If you look at, I showed that big diagram where we take the portfolio, divvy it up by quarter, prioritize, and eventually deliver. It is that much more difficult when you're receiving demand from various other sources. It's not easy because you're not receiving it in time. You're receiving it, much later than the cycle that I showed you a few slides back. So, and that's why following Agile is that much more difficult. Following scaled Agile is even more difficult. But regardless, we figured a method to the madness. Sorry about that. And so fundamentally got into a rhythm of really engaging closely with all the other platforms in such a fashion that we actually get enough information in a timely fashion and work with their schedules as well. They also have fixed cadence of releases, etc. And leverage that for actually delivering solutions. So, so those things we figured out, but fundamentally what I want to sort of talk about here is that this whole process achieved a significant maturity. In fact, I mentioned about ART score and the fact that we assess the maturity of every delivery center. The 3.55 that you see over there was actually the highest score, maturity score across all delivery centers. So this is just one example of what we did in order to sort of, keep improving the maturity of delivering using agile practices. Then the 92% that you see, I talked about sharpening the axe. I talked about test automation. I talked about in-sprint automation as well on the previous slide. So the 92% is the percentage of scripts that are automated today. So we don't have to, do a lot of manual testing. A lot of the testing actually happens automatically. We've delivered 12 releases ever since we started off using Agile every quarter. So 12 quarters, you can imagine, or more than that actually. Velocity increase, it also was one of the, one of the delivery centers with the highest velocities. So fundamentally, the year-on-year velocity was 25% in terms of what was delivered in 2013 versus what was delivered in 2014. The star that you see there is interesting. So to really measure as to whether we are configured for success, we actually give a star to teams which have the right attributes. So we realized that distributed agile is not a special thing, at least at our maturity level. We're just 2.5 years into this whole thing. So we said teams should not cut across more than two locations, for starters. Second, a Scrum team should not be overly large. It should be 7 plus or minus 2, and we want to stick to that. Third, product owner involvement should be 100% or close to 100%. So there were 5 such attributes which we sort of measure, and all these teams that are part of this delivery center had an STH star. So fundamentally, they were configured for success, and we would constantly check whether really they are configured for success. 0, but they were close to 0. So there was not enough real estate to put the fraction there. That's there. And one thing I missed saying when I talked about the delivery centers is that the whole idea was to deliver, with fixed teams, using fixed budgets, and deliver fixed releases, just like a product company would release quarter on quarter. And that's why what we refer to as the, overarching document that calls out what's going to be delivered every quarter is the lean product charter. Yeah. So the frameworks do exist. That's question number one, answer number one. Second thing is that if you look at the way, a lot of the testing happens in foundation technology platforms, they're repetitive in nature. So we took advantage of that, and we tried to automate as much of that repetition as possible. So the reason it will never be 100% is because that sprint will not be automated. That sprint, there would be stuff that's getting delivered in that sprint, which will obviously not be automated. So as a consequence, it will always be less than 100%. It would probably be sometimes 80, 85, sometimes 92, etc. So there'll always be a catch-up. But the moment we catch up, there will be new functionality getting delivered.
Yeah, so when you have new functionalities with that also, you had leveraged test automation or new features?
So when we have new functionality, that will have to be, initially, the script would have to be built manually. Yep. Yes, we would build it manually during the course of that sprint. Sometimes it would get done inside that sprint. Sometimes, if it is too involved, it will happen outside the sprint.
Okay.
And so that's how we do it. So it will never be 100%. It will always be in that range of 80 to 90, 92. So 92 was probably the best case.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good question. And our understanding is that if we deliver 80%, of the requirements, right, then that's good. So yeah, we are giving ourselves. So one is we are giving ourselves a buffer of 20% for 2 reasons. One, we ourselves probably can land into challenges. Second, because this is iterative, because Agile is all about iteration, right, there could be changes along the way. So as compared to the original user stories, if we deliver 80% of what we set out to achieve originally, that's considered to be a good thing. If it is less than 80% of what was originally targeted, the original velocity, there could be multiple reasons for it. One, did the requirements change so much that we couldn't actually live up to that? Or did we actually get into technical issues or issues that were not planned for, which resulted in that situation? We give ourselves that 20% buffer to actually manage that. But you're absolutely right that we are giving ourselves some headroom to manage change. And change will happen, especially in Agile.
Okay, thank you. But no, this 80%, 80-20, where are you putting this buffer?
In the way we report out. In the way we report out to the business, etc. In the way we communicate to the business, etc.
Okay.
Granted, the reality on the ground is slightly different. We get dinged when we actually don't deliver what we originally promised. Not everyone understands this ethos. Not everyone understands that Agile is about trying to iteratively improve. Not everyone understands that. As a consequence, we get dinged when, let's say, we promised X, but what gets delivered is maybe 0.8x or 0.9x. We get badly dinged, I'll be honest with you. But it's a constant journey, and today we are probably 50% there. It's a mindset thing. We'll have to educate everybody about how Agile really works, and eventually we'll get there.
Okay, thank you. But okay, one more thing is like the entire backlog is available right from the start. Is that right? Or is there any change that is coming in between also? That also, yeah.
That will also go through a prioritization. So it's not as if it's a free for all. So you saw that big chart where I showed top down. You had the annual operating plan resulting in prioritized features, and the prioritized features getting organized by quarter, and those features getting broken up into user stories, getting split into sprints, etc., right? So let's say there's a new requirement, it'll go through that pipe. It'll go through that pipe, and the product owner would have to tell if it is important enough to be delivered in a particular sprint. And if it has to be delivered in a particular sprint, that product owner would have to sacrifice something that is actually slated to be delivered in that sprint. So let's say the points you give to that new feature is 5, just theoretically. And that's so important that they want it in that sprint. It means that they'll have to sacrifice something else worth 5 points in that sprint.
Yeah, thank you. No, yeah, I understand that part. You're pushing out something to the next sprint or the next release, right? But what if, like, I want to know if you already have a set of, let's say, X number of requirements, then in that case, if you get X plus N, does X minus N, I mean, the minus N gets subtracted from the entire list, or do you keep on doing more and then basically it will keep on...
It doesn't get subtracted from the long list.
Okay.
So it'll stay in the long list.
Then
It'll only get prioritized to a subsequent sprint.
Right, then your releases are going to extend. If you keep on adding more requirements...
It will be with the consent of the product owner.
Right.
The product owner is the guy who decides what gets delivered in a particular release. The moment he or she decides that there's something which is more important than what is being delivered right now, he or she is taking a conscious decision to deprioritize something else to a subsequent sprint or a subsequent release.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, I think this. Yeah, one comment is this might work in a product development, but if it's like a fixed scope or a fixed price, we might have to take it differently.
True, but then you know what, you figure it out. It's not as if it's rocket science. As you keep going through the motions, right, things adjust itself.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So. Yeah, so on this, instead of a case study, right, I want to just say that we actually took this up for some special treatment. This was an order to fulfillment program. There are a few people from the order to fulfillment program also in this thing. So a few specific things were taken that had some backlog quality issue. For instance, there were orphaned user stories. So there were 1,000+ orphaned user stories. It came down to just 2. Fundamentally, all user stories should link back up to the original features that were promised. Obviously, some special steps were taken to improve the quality. Product owner involvement, there were challenges, took steps to sort of improve that. It obviously improved the way they delivered. The integration, typically I had mentioned a little while back, always integration or anything that has to do with technology gets involved a little late. Instead of getting involved a little late, idea was to get them involved earlier so that they go through the motions of a proper agile process. And we did that with this program, and it worked out extremely well. Then feature teams. Now, there is a tendency, especially, to actually organize teams which deliver something, but not necessarily end-to-end features. But a conscious decision was taken here to deliver full-blown features at the end of every sprint, and feature teams were created. So that sort of helped as well. So there are a bunch of metrics here, which obviously you can go through, but I'm just quickly going through since I was told that there's only 10 more minutes. I'm quickly rushing through this. And yeah, I mentioned about product owners already. So I'll just move ahead. In the interest of time, I'll skip that case study. Lessons learned. Firstly, Agile should not be IT-driven only. Very essential to take the business along. I think in Philips, we are doing a reasonable job of making that happen. Transformation agents. I mentioned about Agile Center of Excellence. I mentioned about the coaches. I mentioned about the training, the fact that these guys coach programs and what have you. And that's very, very important because without these people, it's very difficult to really go through the Agile journey because you need these experts to really help you. You get into very difficult situations multiple times. There are situations when a program becomes super important They'll say, forget about annual operating plan, forget about prioritized features. I just want the damn thing delivered next release. So how do you really live up to that? How do you ensure that you still stay honest to Agile? In those situations, these coaches and external experts really help. But in general, they help. In general, they help us to increase our maturity. I mentioned about the ART assessment scores. A lot of these coaches actually help us increase our maturity levels. I mentioned about sharpening the axe. We've got to constantly do that. We've got to build assets. I mentioned about automation scripts. I mentioned about build and test, build and deployment, automation, configuration automation, multiple things you could do depending on the platform. Different platform, different assets. But it's very, very important to not just be extremely rigid and sacrosanct about Agile and Agile only. Agile will succeed when you have the rest of the paraphernalia. It's very important to constantly keep sharpening the axe and keep doing stuff that actually helps Agile and facilitates Agile. Then system team. Now, the system team is a central team that actually does the sharpening the axe kind of work. They keep improving, keep building assets, keep the platform stable, introduce procedures, guidelines, etc. Keep updating the repository. We've got something called a solution design framework. All of that. The system team is vital. Every platform should have a system team. We have one for every platform in Philips, and it helps significantly. Now, the last but not the least, the thing that actually suffers most when you're in a crunch situation is to skip Scrum ceremonies. It's okay, let's not have a retro this time. It's okay, let's not do release planning this time. It's okay, let's not really have a stand-up every day. It's okay, why 15 minutes? Let's have a 1 hour stand-up. So really the forefathers of Agile and the people who are the experts have prescribed things for a reason. It's very important to stick to the ethos and really follow the ceremonies. This is my last slide. I think so. Yes, it is. What is the road ahead? I mentioned about living the spirit. Vital. Very, very important. We've got to really get Agile into the bloodstream of everybody in Philips in due course of time. Make the benefits of Agile more secular. Today, because of the fact that it's only a 2.5-year-old baby, it's not really 2.5 or 3-year-old baby. It's not as if everyone is getting the benefits of Agile. We need to ensure that the benefits are secular and everyone is reaping the benefits, everyone is using the Agile practices and really living spirit. And that's the next thing that we've got to do. Scaled Agile. So I mentioned about this big chart, the vertical chart. Now, while that is good in theory and probably we're following it for maybe 60-70% of the cases, there's still a big percentage which sort of fall outside of that. The gentleman there asked a lot of questions around prioritization, stuff like that. Those are actually relevant questions because we see that again and again every day. And really following scaled Agile in the true sense of the word is vital, and it is going to help us. We've got to focus on that, and in the years to come, we're going to do that more. Coverage of Agile, I think we've come a long way. I think we should be proud of what we've done in 3 years, but there's still a lot that we can do, and that's something that's going to be a priority. Get everyone to dance to the same tune. That's part of the whole coverage, part of the whole secular benefits topic, but still we've got to get this running in everyone's bloodstream. And finally, yes, doing all this, get to DevOps, ensure not that DevOps is really an Agile vision, but in general, we would like to sort of get operations, delivery, architecture, infrastructure, everyone to run to the same tune. That's the idea. So I think I am almost out of time. I don't know how much time I have for Q&A additionally, but yeah, go ahead.
Agile maturity. Okay. During this transformation, you also have the Agile maturity measurement criteria, right? If you found certain teams, members, product owner, to take example, not coming to retro or planning or so on and so forth, apart from training, have you taken any harsh measurement or actions against them, or what was the steps you took? Because general tendencies, you train them, you motivate them and stuff. Even it doesn't work, then what did you do?
So I have some partners. I saw some cognizant badges as well. I saw some Wipro badges. So very clearly, we've got our 2 key partners in the room. But I'll tell you this, regardless of that. A lot of these people who, in case they flout, they are from the partners. So being on the customer side, it's fairly easy to get the behavior right the next time round. But anyway, jokes apart, have we indulged in strict measures? No. I mean, not explicit strict measures. Other than having a come to Jesus kind of talk, other than that, nothing else. We haven't had to really indulge in something really serious. Yes, if let's say a Scrum Master turns out to be not there, not skilled enough, we have asked for a Scrum Master replacement. That happens very often because you don't have really good Scrum Masters across the board. That happens. But other than that, we haven't had to. If you really get, because Agile is also about the spirit. It's about everyone coming together, really feeling for it, contributing, doing what they can to deliver. Pokering sessions are all about that, right? So to actually use command control measures is not in the spirit of Agile. So we haven't used that. If things really fall into, people really follow the spirit, it works out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Srini. That was a wonderful session on Agile at Philips. I'm sure you have ignited a lot of questions and interest in Philips, and it's wonderful. I request you to accept this little token of appreciation from the Scrum Alliance.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Enjoyed my session. If you have any questions, you can always send me an email or call me. I could be available for a few more minutes if you have questions. Thank you.